Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this side event. My name is Pietro Bertazzi. I'm the Global Director of Policy Engagement and External Affairs at CDP. Today we are gathering, of course, here at COP. We all know the urgency that we're facing of taking action. And at CDP, we believe that it is possible to take action only if we measure the impacts that we're having. So disclosure comes in quite importantly in this discourse. In the last couple of years, I will say in the last 5 years, we've been experiencing a steep increase of disclosure around the globe, which is, incredibly promising. We've seen this becoming a norm, and we've seen this being normed as well, becoming mandatory in many jurisdictions around the world. In fact, the importance of disclosure is recognized as well in the IPCC report. The latest report refers to climate disclosure as a framework, behavioral incentive, and economic instrument that addresses market failures. It is critical for us as CDP indeed to look at disclosure and derive the data from disclosure that should inform better decision making. And this is exactly what we are discussing today. We'll focus on these very crucial aspects. We will delve into the collaboration that we have at CDP with the IFRS Foundation. We are incredibly happy to co-organize this side event with them, seeking to enable the transformative action for the global economy. We will structure, it's quite packed events. We will structure today with keynote speakers, and then we'll move into a discussion of collaboration between CDP and IFRS, and we'll end with a panel discussion around, what are the impacts of this collaboration and how disclosure is picked up by society at large, by the economic sector at large. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome, first of all, our keynote speakers, and I will first ask Jingdong Hua, Vice Chair of the ISSB, to take the floor and address with the first keynote speaker. Thank you very much. Please.
Thank you so much, Pietro, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. I'm sure you are all excited about what's happening at COP28. And a lot of productive meetings. So I'm Jingdong Hua. I'm the Vice Chair of the ISSB. Truly delighted to have this event co-hosted with CDP. So Sherry, CDP colleagues, really a big thanks to you. And our special partnership was especially celebrated when our board had our first meeting in Beijing in November, where CDP hosted a great event, not only celebrating our partnership, but also inviting Chinese stakeholders to participate in the event. That was truly remarkable. Let me also acknowledge Dr. Farid, Vice Chair of the IOSCO, for IOSCO's tremendous support of the mandate of ISSB. So, yeah, you see? That cannot be arranged, so it's fate. So let me say that, ISSB, as you probably know, we were born out of COP26, so we are exactly 2 years old. And of course, with G20, IOSCO, Financial Stability Board support, we have achieved a lot in the 2 years, especially this last June when we issued our first 2 reports, IFRS S1, General Requirement for Sustainability Disclosure, and IFRS S2, Climate Disclosure. And I think this is after some intense work, not only by our board, by our staff, but supported by so many stakeholders, 1,400 substantive feedback in terms of the agenda consultation. So we believe we have produced a high quality global baseline standard that are applicable to improve capital market transparency, efficiency, comparability, to better connect the $400 trillion global savings to transition financing, to economic development, especially in global South countries. So the month of June was also a big milestone. We had 3 major events happening. First, the FSB has decided, recognizing the great progress we have made, to culminate the work of TCFD, essentially transferring the work of TCFD to ISSB. And I think you cannot get a stronger endorsement from G20 global community in terms of recognizing our standards as a new global language for sustainability disclosure. And of course, the second milestone was IOSCO's strong endorsement, essentially signaling to its 130 plus members that in their jurisdiction, they can begin a regulatory journey to introduce voluntary, eventually mandatory adoption of ISSB standard. And the 130 plus members of IOSCO represents over 95% of global capital market size. So that's extremely significant. The third milestone, which is less public but equally important, is the work that the ISSB is doing, the International Audit and Assurance Standard Board, issuing or in the process of making their 5,000 series assurance standard in time, so that the disclosure could be assured to minimize and eliminate eventually greenwashing, sustainability washing. So now we certainly have turned our focus from standard making on climate to implementation. So the journey forward is critical, to keep the momentum, and this is where the CDP partnership is so important. So last year at COP27, we did announce a strong partnership where we're going to work together in terms of CDP using our standard in your disclosure platform, and also allow us to access your database. So in addition, we are working already together on capacity building, recognizing over 25,000 global leading companies on CDP platform, now having the mandate to use ISSB standard to disclose their climate sustainability matters. This is huge, because it's not only the 25,000 companies themselves, but their value chain, their supply chain. So the implication is global. It will bring great momentum. Sherry, hopefully next year when we come back, we will be able to report, a lot of progress in terms of achievements. So why our partnership matters? At the end of the day, we need early champions. We need practitioners, role modeling, to be able to inform and provide best practices to the rest of the preparers and companies to come on board, right? If we are talking about creating a new global language, single language on sustainability disclosure, in eliminating the alphabetic soup, I think these 25,000 companies are starting to learn this new language as the first pioneer, right? And the sooner that we start on this language, the sooner we all speak the same language, making the global market in terms of sustainability disclosure a truly understandable decision, useful for investors and for companies. And let me also say, because we are at COP28, that is the biggest challenge is still how do we raise the amount of financing for transition and for achieving this ambitious Paris Agreement goal of 1.5 degree. And public financing is just not enough, right? You really have to be able to unlock and upscale the private flow. And right now, the 400 trillion global savings, a big part of it is not going to emerging market country because investors are saying, we don't have data. We don't have disclosure that we can use to make informed decision to support a company's journey towards transition finance, towards reaching net zero. Early adoption of ISSB standard is not just a compliant exercise. It is an enabling a factor, to help companies to gain access to global financial market, or if you already have access, to lower the cost of financing. So truly, truly delighted that we are having this important discussion, and wishing the discussion a great success, and really, really delighted to have this strategic partnership that we're having with CDP. So let me pass on the mic back to Pietro. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jindong, especially for reminding us that actually it was only 2 years ago when the ISSB was launched. So we are working at speed, and at CDP we're happy to support the adoption of the ISSB standards. Therefore, it's my great pleasure to introduce our new CEO, Sherry Moderator. Please, Sherry.
Thank you very much. And I'm delighted to add my welcome to this event today. Our partnership with IFRS, Jindong, thank you for outlining how important it is to IFRS. And it's important for me to start this conversation with how important it is to CDP as well. And I think that it's a critical time for environmental and climate disclosures. It's always been so. But I think that now we need to remind ourselves that disclosure is not for disclosure's sake. And we need to make sure that disclosure is being used as effectively and efficiently as possible. And it's actually important for us to think about where we're sitting. So we're here at COP. We're thinking about this year as being part of the global stocktake. And so what is the global stocktake? It is a measurement. It is, dare I say, an audit. It is using data to be able to underpin some of that. And of course, I think all of us think it's a little bit of grim reading, but perhaps as we move forward, we can actually think about how a whole of economy approach, including non-state actors, can contribute to a reality of what real whole of economy data means for us, and take action on that basis as well. So at CDP, we live and breathe, if you can measure it, you can manage it. And I think that that is hopefully what today's session is going to underscore as well, in partnership with the IFRS. So we see that this is something that CDP and IFRS have in common. We think about measuring and managing data as being a useful tool to be able to create transparency for action. Our strength is in the difference between what we do. IFRS and ISSB are standard setters. What CDP does is we create a platform for data. I always like to think of it that we all have principles of where we're going. We're wanting to be able to improve our climate situation. There's very high principles on that. I think everyone in this room, I can be confident, agree. Then we need to move down to the next level, which is frameworks, standards, guides, and of course, what's at the bottom there, it's a solid framework of data that's able to be multi-use and be able to support all of the work that's been done already, and I'm sure is still to come, in terms of building out those standards and those frameworks. We recognize this value chain really well at CDP. We created it. So 23 years ago, you had the idea of creating transparency and disclosure. And of course, we're sitting here now with something that is incredibly dynamic and wide. And we know that this is a part that we have to play in an enhanced value chain. So the partnership we have with IFRS is also a partnership that we have with many other players who use the data for various different use cases, business use cases, thinking about supply chain, et cetera. So, we're really feeling that this part is not only directed towards more data, but it's more useful data. We're trying to get to a comprehensive, comparable, and coherent. The 3 C's, that's what we're all working towards. And I think the partnership with ISSB helps us underscore some of that. It answers the calls from the global market as well. Ones that we often hear from our stakeholders is to create a common language. We use that same phrase as well for climate-related financial disclosures. It's helping to end what Jindong said earlier. We're trying to make steps to get rid of the alphabet soup. We're trying to get to action as opposed to confusion. With this harmonization, I think we're going to look at reporting frameworks that are also reliable, as well as not making sure that every dollar that's being spent goes towards action as opposed to reporting. I think that's one of the themes, and as Pietro pointed out, I'm a relatively new CEO at CDP. This is week 9 for me. But one of the things that comes through very, very clearly is that we need to create efficiency so that we're really making sure that the money is taking action as opposed to having a reporting burden. At CDP, we turn standards into something tangible, and hopefully that is well on the way to achieving the goal of efficiency. When we translate a standard into questions and data points to be answered and actioned, that takes it to a new powerful level. Actually, with ISSB, we've not only committed to partnership, that's all very fine words, but the reality is we're working really hard together. CDP and ISSB colleagues are sitting together to be able to map the data to the ISSB S2, and we will be completely aligned, and that data will be tagged for 2024. So we will be the first place where companies globally can be confident that these two organizations are working together to make efficiency happen. So there's no route to net zero without truly global action. I was pleased to meet Jindong, not just today. We've met a number of times. And actually that's remarkable in the fact that I've only been in this position for 8 or 9 weeks. I think that's an important point to make, because actually this is about making sure that we are coherent globally. And of course the ISSB office in Beijing isn't just about Beijing either. It isn't just about China, but it's about making sure that we're incorporating emerging markets in Asia. And some of you may know that I was delighted to meet Jindong in my old hometown. So I used to live in Beijing for 3 years, and actually my view is that Asia is an incredibly dynamic region, and it needs to be able to be coherent and comparable to the rest of the world. And I think the work that we're doing together is going to make big steps in being able to do that as well. So the CDP and ISSB partnership should give companies the clarity and the guidance they need to start disclosing as holistically as possible and easing that reporting burden. That's what we're here to do. It should give investors the confidence to start with this ISSB 2 aligned baseline as high quality data, and we make it available so that it can aid decision making. That's for investors, that's for regulators, that's for buyers, that's for corporates, and that's for academics. That's for everyone who needs that data. So I hope you're as excited as I am to learn from this panel and the next, and actually be part of this new dawn of trying to create more efficiency into the system. It's what we're dedicated to, and we all need your help. So thank you.
Many thanks, Sherry and Jindong. Excellent to see why this collaboration has been, we've been working so hard to make it happen. We're shifting gears and moving towards the next segment of this session. And I would like to invite to take the stage to my colleagues, who, I believe they are really the movers and shakers in this area. Nikki Bartlett, Chief Impact Officer at CDP. And Marty McBrien, Chief Strategic... Wonderful. Please, take the floor. And sorry for not getting your... Chief Strategic Affairs and Capacity Building at ISSB. There we go. So we did hear about the history of the collaboration, the 2 fantastic years, and I would like to start, with you, Marty, asking from your point of view, why is this partnership so important for the market, and what do you think it will allow for?
Are these on?
I think it.
On? Yep, good.
Yes, it's good. Please.
Thanks, Pietro, and thanks for the very kind introduction. I think you should add yourself to that list of movers and shakers. I don't think that goes without saying. So good morning, everyone. Well, first of all, I am delighted that we have this partnership together. I was the 50th staff member, I think, on the CDP payroll back in the late 2000s. I hate to say that, I'm aging myself, aren't I, this morning? And so moving on to the IFRS Foundation all these years later, it's great to see the 2 organisations still working, and still being able to be part of that family. So with that all aside, what does it really mean in practice, and what does it mean for you, those that are going to actually have to do this? So first of all, I think it brings brilliant market efficiencies. And Sherry said this is about action, not about reporting and data for its sake, right? So I've always said that the CDP platform was a brilliant tool, and I hope I'm on message here for CDP, but to collect structure and put rigor around your data before you think about reporting for it for broader compliance purposes if you need to, right? It's about embracing those opportunities you get from collecting it and then being able to put the right rigor around it, kick the tires on it if you like, and get it ready for reporting, up into the annual report and accounts and out to the market as it's needed. So I think that's the first really exciting point about this. You'll be collecting and structuring the data you need to comply with our standards, the S2 standard, by the end of this next year if you're a CDP reporter, in a way that allows you also to take the journey. So if you're in a developing and emerging economy or you haven't started on TCFD, it's not to be ashamed about, or haven't started on climate reporting yet, it's a really good platform to help you take that first step and give you the confidence to go further and work with your leadership teams and embed this across your organizations. So that's the first one. The second one is it's a really helpful tool to get the market ready. It helps to create the enabling conditions that will really build this into markets around the world. It would give regulators the confidence to level the playing field and move forward with adoption going forward as well. So it's got two really, really important roles in the first year of this partnership, and it's, let's say efficiency and market readiness.
Well, Mardi, that sort of took half of what I was going to say away. Thanks for that. We're joined at the hip always. I think we've said it a few times already today, but I think this is really worth hammering home. This is about decision-useful data. Mardi hasn't given her half her life, probably more than that since you were cutting down trees in Australia, to create accounting standards for accounting standards' sakes. No one does that. Maybe there are some, but this is really so that there is the right information flowing into the economy to have the right decisions made, and fast. We have not got the time for the type of inefficiencies we had in the financial data space to happen in the sustainability data space. It took a very long time for that world to consolidate. We do not have that time. And so that's one of the reasons why we're partnering so closely. We really want to see harmonization, a global baseline, a level of density to the data that means investors, but not just investors, real economy actors. Actually, that's really vital. We often forget that the big capital allocation things, the decisions that drive infrastructure, actual physical products and services coming into the space is from the real economy. And this data is also vital for them. If it doesn't help them to make better decisions, to have a better cost of capital, we've all failed. Right? And that's what this partnership is really all about. And it's been such a delight to work with the ISSB colleagues. We're literally going line by line on both sides and sweating quite a bit. We've taken a lot of inspiration from the speed with which you guys have brought that into being. And really, our system has been sort of almost analog for quite some time. And it's growing up at speed so that we can accommodate having a much more flexible, much less reporter burden route through this so that the baseline is created and that tagging is done.
Yeah. Talking about speed, indeed. We are experiencing, of course, the ISSB standards representing a global baseline, uptake of disclosure in large economies, fantastic, in emerging economies, really catching up, and that's the biggest area of growth. But question to the two of you, how does the partnership between IFRS and CDP help emerging economies in taking, the practice of disclosure and transforming the economies?
So we're delighted, Nikki and I are really delighted to sit here today to talk about something that we're doing in China. And we both committed last year at COP27 to work together as part of the ISSB's Global Capacity Building Initiative, really focused on the Global South to bring change and action. So we've spent this year working on it, thinking about what we're going to do, and we're kicking off in China. And we're kicking off, and I don't want to re-quote this, so excuse me while I read it. We're launching, and I believe that's today, and I'm quite excited, the Value Chain Sustainability Disclosure Empowerment Program. And that'll be working with the value chain in China, coordinating really key activities there on capacity building that then we can use as a pilot to roll out around the world the following years. So I think it's a really exciting place to start and, and test this relationship. I mean, we'll be working lots of other places too, don't get me wrong, we've got plans for that, we'll get onto that. But this is a really important market for us to start to think about how that value chain comes together and how we can bring these two partners together to really advance reporting and disclosure and that better information for markets and decision making. So, I get excited about lots of things, but I am genuinely really excited about this. I think it can really do some good.
Absolutely. For us, it's not about pivoting to China. Our second biggest disclosing country in the CDP system is China, right? We've had 500% growth since 2018 in China in the CDP system. It's been extraordinary, right? The companies in China are part of the value chains of companies around the world. They also have their own vast value chains that reach right across Asia. And that has caused us to really have to lean in and change our model to think differently. Because it's not just that the quantity that's coming through. Our second and our third is Japan. So Asia is actually our most important market by far, right? And what we're seeing there, when people go, yeah, but is it good data? Yeah, actually it really is. It really is good data.
The Asians are the best reporters, I'd say. I don't need to single out a jurisdiction, but I'd say the Asian companies are the best reporters in the world.
It's robust. And what we need now is to scale. Imagine if the markets, across the emerging markets, if China, if India, South ASEAN are in this and we have a baseline coming from there, we've truly linked up supply chains. We've truly linked up the world's markets, and we could start to get that flow moving much, much faster.
That is really fantastic. Anything that you would like to add? Otherwise, I think we can shift gears and move towards the last part of the panel.
Well, the only thing I would add is this won't stop at China. This activity is going to cover all of our offices in all of our jurisdictions and beyond. China is part of the Global South, but we'll be doing everything from Zimbabwe and Zambia, Kenya, right up to, across to Brazil, up to Colombia, and right around the other side. We plan on doing webinars together, workshops. This won't be stopping there. So, if you as the users of these systems have questions or have a need, then let us know, because we're here to help meet that need and address those barriers to get that high quality data that we've all been talking about.
Therefore, we have to wait for the next announcement between the collaboration, next scaling up the collaboration, or the first data set. Indeed,
I'd be remiss, Pietro, if you don't mind me coming in, if I didn't mention our efforts around joint digitization work as well.
That's key.
Because I think that is a really key
Yeah,
part of
please.
it. And Bing's sitting here, and he's going to kick me if I don't say it. So I just thought I'd flag that. But we are working on digitization together, looking at digital taxonomies, making sure that is all globally aligned, so we can start to see that even greater consistency in use of information and seamless transactions around the world, really raising up the quality and making it accessible.
And interoperable, right? That's the key. That's what people need.
So that is underway as well. So you'll see more of that too. So watch this space.
Exactly. Thank you so much. We are quite moving at speed in this session today, so I will now like to move to the last segment. It's the panel discussion. I would like to invite the speakers to take the seats here. Let's start with Sarah Bloom Ruskin, former governor of the Federal Reserve Board, former deputy secretary of the U.S. Department of Treasury, and currently distinguished professor of law at Duke University, as well as Mohammed Farid Saleh, vice chair of IOSCO Board and chair of the Growth and Emerging Markets Committee. Please take the floor. I would like to invite as well João Paulo de Rezende, Special Advisor on Climate Change Economics, Minister of Finance of Brazil. That is stuck somewhere, apparently, so we're just, waiting for him to join, but let's move ahead. Hendrik Rosenthal, CLP Director, Group Sustainability, please, thank you. And Jamie Ferguson, Director for Climate Business International Finance Corporation, IFC, please. Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. And I would like to start, with you, Sarah. Indeed, the UNFCCC is working on the Net Zero Recognition and Accountability Framework consultation. You are the co-chair for that process, and you've been gathering quite important actors around the table for this important development. Is there any insights that you can share with us at this stage about the process so far? And considering that data management is one of the key components of the framework, how do you think environmental disclosure align and contributes to the process of the RAF?
Yeah, well, thank you, Pietro, and thank you really for putting this together. I'll say a little bit about our work, and this is the work that Bing and I have been doing together. We've come in independently to look at really the power of net zero in the context of so-called non-state actors, but in particular the notion regarding what is really understood as accountability. And accountability, as everybody knows, depends on having quality data and relevant data regarding so that a firm can actually set its net zero target and do something about it. The idea of having quality data and the role that CDP plays in it has been of great interest to us. And in the context of our consultation process, we have been talking to businesses all around the world of all various kinds, businesses in the real economy, transportation, manufacturing, the pharmaceutical sector, the financial sector in all of its manifestations, and really trying to understand what the barriers are to them when they actually set their net zero targets. So this is one particular usage. Sherry was talking about, the different kinds of possibilities that data is for. We're looking at the net zero usage case. And so if net zero is going to mean anything, if it's going to be useful, it has to have good data behind it. Because it's the data that permits the company to set the target, and it's the data that actually drives investors to make decisions regarding those firms' net zero disclosures. So that's what we've been focused on, and we have been hearing, that firms are actually caring quite a bit of being able to have access to the right data. So we'd like to hear. We're very interested in learning more about the role that CDP is playing, and of course, the partnership. This partnership is very exciting because it's going to actually bring some structure to the data. But it's important that data be high quality and that it be accessible, and that firms are able to use it so that there can be a real uptake in the making of net zero commitments. So I'll stop there for now.
Absolutely. High quality is what we are there to ensure, and endorsing and implementing the IFRS standards paves towards that direction. So we're committed to work on that. Thank you, Sarah, for your remarks. We move now to Mohammed Farid Saleh, and indeed IOSCO, I think it was in July that IOSCO endorsed the ISSB standards. Why you think this endorsement is important for the markets, and what are the plans of IOSCO to support jurisdictions in their efforts to adopt the new standards? I'm particularly thinking about the emerging economies. Please, Mohammed.
Thank you very much, and I believe those chairs is a testament of the mental fortitude of the speakers. By the way, it is very difficult to be It is very difficult to be speaking, and keeping yourself upright that way. But anyways, so yeah, we're trying. So at IOSCO, it was very important for us to endorse, but it was a process for the endorsement. Honestly speaking, we had a sustainable task force that worked extensively here with Jindong and the ISSB on several aspects. We needed to make sure that there is components of proportionality. It cannot be the case that very large institutions are required with the same exact requirements of disclosures on the sustainability aspect and on the environmental or carbon emissions as it is the same between both entities. So proportionality was one very important point for us at IOSCO to ensure that it is present in S1 and S2 standards. Another point was the interoperability, because we have several jurisdictions at IOSCO level. For example, Egypt has mandatory adopted the TCFD, and companies are mandated to be reporting on environmental and sustainability matters for listed companies and companies operating in the financial sector. And as well, you find the central bank mandating reporting on a GRI reporting framework. And here is the importance of the endorsement. Within the same country, you had two reporting frameworks from two different regulators asking for different reporting frameworks, which is quite confusing. And some of these banks were actually listed. So at a point of time, they had to report with the TCFD reporting framework for us as regulators of the capital markets, and they had to report using the GRI reporting framework to comply with the central bank. So this is the importance of having a global baseline, and this is where we started to, how can I say, understand and agree on the importance of having a global baseline when it comes to reporting frameworks. But when it comes to, I would say, technicalities, harmonization of these reporting frameworks was quite important, and consistency of data. Ultimately, for investors to be capable of comparing data, it has to be done within the same methodology. If they are done with different methodologies, a different level of difficulty would arise because of trying to, how can I say it, adapt both data sets to each other to be able to compare it. So consistency was very important for us, and that's why we adopted IFRS S1 and IFRS S2. And then investor protection and market stability in general. More data, accurate data, efficient data, allows for efficient asset allocation, and that's the ultimate point. Efficient asset allocation is one of the main roles of capital markets, and without having proper and accurate and comparable data, it would have been still very difficult for companies to be able to pinpoint what is sustainable or not, what is green or not, and how can we take it from its origins. I do agree with the saying, what you can't measure, you can't manage. So the starting point for even carbon markets would be that companies realize and get to know how much they are emitting in terms of carbon dioxide, their carbon footprint. They need to know what are they doing right and wrong when it comes to sustainability. So without having this global baseline, we as regulators at the IOSCO level were always confused. Okay, should we follow the TCFD? Should we follow the GRI? Should we follow the UN Global Compact? Should we follow the alphabet soup that Jindong was talking about? So by having this, we ensure the consistency to help investors ultimately. At the end, data is just a tool, as either for action for companies to do investments, or for investors to decide on their investments whether they like it or not. And the final point in this first part of your question, we believe for any institution to be plugged in the financial system, to be able to have an insurance company providing insurance certificates on whatever asset they have, to be able to take a loan from a banking sector or from a developmental entity or DFIs without having this reporting, I believe they will be unplugged at a point of time. So it is not a matter of doing it from a luxury and benevolent perspective. It will become at a point of time, if you're not reporting on these aspects, if you're not trying to abide and reduce your carbon footprint, you will be unplugged of the financial system globally, locally and globally. Thank you.
Thank you, and it's indeed fantastic. In our policy engagement at CDP, we actually advise policymakers to make high quality monetary disclosure with certain principles, and policy coherence is something that we have identified. So thank you for stressing the importance of the IOSCO direction and seeking that policy coherence in jurisdictions.
But then capacity building would have to kick in. Without proper capacity building and training, it would be just income papers, to be honest. All the effort that Jindong has done over the 2 years, which is quite impressive, it would be income papers because ultimately, if you don't train and then retrain after seeing the first drafts, and this is happening to us, I'm talking here from experience, not only from a high-level regulatory perspective. You get to enforce it. You ask companies to do these type of reports. And for them, the initial thought would be, okay, we're going to abide by it. Let's try to tick the boxes and get over with. And when these reports come, okay, we'll have to retrain them. It's not about ticking the boxes. It's not about just making sure that, okay, I click this box. I have a strategy that is put in one of the drawers of my desk. So capacity building is one of the areas that as well IOSCO is working extensively with the ISSB and the IFRS Foundation for different jurisdictions at the IOSCO level, and this would be the starting point to have a level playing field. We are capital markets regulators, more or less, and financial sector regulators, more or less. Okay. So you have another spectrum that does not report to the SEC or the FRA or the FCA. By having the IFRS was the only route to make it a global benchmark, a truly global benchmark. And for this, we need to rely on our capacity building that's going to be built from seminars, workshops, training programs, etc., etc., and move to other companies that are actually not listed, because I don't believe that the IFRS S1 and S2 is meant to be only for listed companies and financial sector. It is meant to be for the entire spectrum of incorporated companies. As long as you have a plug and you issue carbon emissions, you need to report something on that regard. So capacity building is quite an important component that we get to support extensively. And continuous endorsement. I mean, we had it mandatory, the TCFD. We still need to see some translation for the ISSB, and I spoke extensively with Jindong here that we need to get the translated version of the ISSB, or several ones, to expedite the endorsement of local jurisdictions to adopt the sustainability one and S2 of those IFRSs. So I believe this is what we're planning going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I want to go back to your point about capacity building, because indeed, it is important, it is crucial to build capacity, but at the same time, we experience that companies look at what their peers are doing. And in that sense, that is the reason why we invited CLP today. Hendrik, you are the Director of Group Sustainability, and I will say an early adopter of the ISSB standards. Can you tell us, what was the journey? Because indeed, you adopted the exposure draft. So indeed, you were a super early adopter. So can you tell us about, the experience and any lesson learned that other companies can actually, indeed, learn from your experience, please?
Sure, happy to. Thank you. Thank you for having CLP join the discussion today and provide a bit of perspective from an issuer's perspective and from a practitioner of how we live in the world of evolving standards and the alphabet soup. For us, it was a bit of an easy one to some extent. We've been reporting to CDP for well over 20 years. We've been doing GR reports. We've been very transparent in terms of sustainability and what we do in our business. Just for context, for those who don't know CLP, we're an electric utility based out of headquartered in Hong Kong with business interests across Asia-Pac. With a mixed portfolio of assets. So coal, obviously, having been sort of the root of our business, actually. We are 120 years old and providing electricity to the market. And over time, we have built commitments to decarbonize our business. So we have a mixed portfolio of gas, of nuclear, and renewables across the various investments that we have. And for us, it was really a big focus in terms of how do we tell this story of decarbonization? Back in 2007, we started with a climate vision, as we call it, our Climate Vision 2050. We set targets to decarbonize, and it's the carbon intensity of the electricity that we send. That's the priority for us in terms of really giving us some guide of how we evolve. Now, as we then went through the late, starting from 2015 onwards, when TCFD came through, it was really helpful in terms of the recommendations and the 4 pillars that have come forward to provide us guide, but also affirmation to some extent of all the things we've been doing, actually, in terms of institutionalizing the governance, for starters, of having a sustainability committee, for instance, at our board level, and bringing climate to our directors as a key issue as part of our business transformation, as part of our transition in the energy sector. Now, when we then had this announcement with ISSB coming through, it was really an easy one for us. Our disclosures, as I said, were really comprehensive. We did already cover most of the areas. We did start referencing TCFD early on. So when ISSB came forward with a prototype, we're like, okay, I think we can do this, actually. We have most of this information. So it's the structure that this standard was projecting to us at the time that was so helpful to then follow through with. So the prototype exposure draft, okay. So we published 2 years of a climate-related financial disclosures report, and intentionally not calling it TCFD report, by the way, which is what many other companies did at the time. And dealing with our annual report team. It's a separate team who writes our financial report, and then my team publishing the sustainability report. We've had discussions for years now on an annual basis. How do we differentiate these 2 reports, actually, right? What is the difference? And this whole aspect of financially relevant information, what's the impact on enterprise value, is so key to really help us then focus the annual report on that for the investors. And double materiality being a helpful exercise to then differentiate what do we need to tell investors in terms of risks and opportunities, and what should we actually be very transparent about in terms of our impact on the wider community. So those two separations is what we continue to bring out in our disclosures, and we're working on this right now. This is fresh in my top of my head. We've been having these discussions over the last few weeks as we are preparing our 23 reports already, just bringing forward with the standards now, S1 and S2 being out, and we can really take this to a level where our annual report will be that S1 and S2 disclosure, the financial report. So the sustainability team then comes in, works with the annual report team. This is the issues you need to cover in our annual report. And you guys go write it, actually. And I continue to write my sustainability report focusing on impact. And we no longer have a climate-related disclosures report. That will be, if I can make an announcement at COP, that's what we're going to do this year. Everyone's making announcements, right? So we will retire our climate-related financial disclosures report and have that fully embedded within the annual report. And when we talk about alignment with CDP and ISSB, I think that's music to my ears, actually. CDP is a very involved exercise, just to be, and it's one of many that we have to manage.
Nice choice, nice choice.
So if there is that ongoing collaboration, that's really great, and I think just focus on that. But when you didn't start making new announcements already, I'm getting worried. What else is coming now, right? So let's just figure this part out, would be my sort of feedback on this part, on this sort of collaboration. How do you actually marry that together? And fundamentally, CDP is different from a reporting standard. You guys are judging our performance, right? Just clearly not happening with a reporting standard. It is just merely creating a platform for transparency. But when we then get an A+ or an A- or a B, whatever, that's when we pay attention, and it's helpful to then communicate with our own management team, our own directors. This is where the gaps are. We do not have yet a 1.5 degree target. What will it take for us to get that? So that's sort of fundamentally a differing sort of exercise or focus area of the two organizations anyways. So that's good.
No, thank you. That's actually the use case that Sherry was mentioning earlier. And it's from your point of view, how to use the disclosure within the company to transform the company. And historically, I need to pick on this. I think, fantastic to hear how ready you were to jump and do the ISSB S2 standards. And indeed, your practice looking at TCFD was really instrumental. And that's something that we actually tried to help companies at CDP when in 2018 we integrated the TCFD recommendations in our disclosure. So we are there to implement standards at scale. That's exactly the sweet spot that CDP plays, in this ESG ecosystem. So happy to hear that we help you in that journey, in that sense. You may understand by now, unfortunately, our colleague from Brazil could not be with us. The reason why we invited them, and I want still to share this with you, is because actually Brazil, the CVM, which is the Comissão de Valores Imobiliários, was the first adopter of the IFRS S1 and S2 into the Brazilian regulatory framework, setting out a roadmap to move from voluntary to mandatory use from 2024 to 2026. So indeed, that's a bit, Mohammed was mentioning the direction that, policymakers can give to the market to streamline and try to point organizations, companies to the most important standards to use. So unfortunately, he could not be with us. He was stuck like on the way here. We understand it's very difficult to move around the COP. But actually, this allows us to move, swiftly to our last speaker of the panel, which actually is quite an important player in this in this sphere, looking at the ecosystem they're working on. And Jamie, you are director for climate business at the IFC of the World Bank family, and historically you've been supporting on capacity building quite a lot. I think we joined as well together with the CDSB, then CDP, the UN Sustainable Stock Exchange Initiative. We joined trying to build capacity in the market. So can you share what are the challenges that you've been encountering, possibly focusing a bit more on emerging markets among the users of the standards, please?
Thanks, Pietro, and thanks very much for including IFC in the conversation. So for those who don't know us, IFC is the private sector arm of the World Bank. So the World Bank Group, we have a shared mission to end poverty on a livable planet, and as the private sector piece of that, we're like the original triple bottom line investor. We're looking to accelerate the transition to low carbon resilient growth, and I emphasize growth in emerging markets. We can't have a just transition without addressing that growth and creating jobs for the demographics of the global south. So in that context, we kind of we are an investor and an active investor and an active mobilizer of capital. So really welcome the efforts of the ISSB. All harmonization and interoperability in this space is really welcome, and we were an active participant in the consultations. Jindong's actually an alum, so we got an easy entry on that to be the voice of the emerging markets, to make this workable for companies, private sector in emerging markets, and we're an active user of CDP data. Thank you very much. So I mean, two messages from me, and they've already been said. The first is, we put money to work. Last year we invested just shy of 15 billion in climate finance, which was 45% of our business. And what Jindong said earlier is true. Data moves markets. And there is a paucity of data, and there's a paucity of an organization of that data, and there's a paucity of simplified, actionable data in emerging markets, and it's got to be made easy. And as a sort of slight aside, in the different but connected world of labeled finance, we were an early issuer. In fact, Jindong, in his role as treasurer, we're an early buyer. We've been providing guidance, and we've been providing capacity building. We've trained 285 FIs across 70 markets. And today, label bond issuances in emerging markets are at sort of 200 billion per year. So it moves markets. So that I concur with strongly, and this is an important piece of that puzzle. The other piece is what Mohammed said, and I couldn't say it more robustly: capacity building. This is, yes, there's urgency here, but there's behavioral change at every piece of the puzzle here, whether it's regulators, whether it's stock exchanges, whether it's companies. They all need support and capacity building, and we've been very grateful for our collaboration with the IFRS Foundation and the UN Sustainable Stock Exchanges to support training. I'm going to look it up because I'll get the number wrong. Yeah, 23,000 companies across 60 markets trained in the last few years on disclosure, but that's tip of iceberg, frankly. So yes, we're busy, a lot more to do, and we welcome all partnership on that front. So all new efforts and initiatives really welcome. And then on the regulatory side, we have a very active role as the secretariat of the Sustainable Banking and Finance Network, which has, again, I'll look it up, too many numbers in my head this week, regulators from 65 countries. And so there, again, building the capacity on the regulatory side is key. But, it's really important to keep in mind the reality on the ground in a lot of our markets. The stock exchanges have very limited liquidity and very few issuers. The baseline of data availability and reporting is low, so we've got a long way to go on that and make it fit for purpose in the right markets. But the drivers of investment demanding more data, and the drivers of Scope 3, supply chain demanding more data, all is pushing in the right direction. So, all efforts to harmonise around this are welcome, and we're happy to play our part.
Many thanks, Jamie, and I believe we did, incredibly well. We had a very packed session today, but we've done incredibly well with timing, and I would like to thank all the speakers. But before leaving, I actually think, we may have time for 2 very brief questions from the floor. Anybody? We have 1 there and 2. Go. Okay, please.
Hi, thanks so much for the great insights. My name is Leah Nicholson. I'm with Terrascope, a carbon accounting platform based in Singapore. And my question is the way that Scope 3 is now mandatory and a watershed moment, some of the operational challenges with, and I'm going to dig into the weeds for a minute here, just to give some examples. So in Japan, the ministry requires franchises to be reported under a different scope than Scope 3, different to the global standard. The UK, Japan, one shows emissions factors, the national database, with transportation reflected in waste calculations and one waste outside. And these 2 details are actually a big deal when you're looking at Scope 3. It's okay with Scope 1 and 2, you can kind of sort through, but the amount of business data for multinational enterprises with Scope 3, this introduces unnecessary potential for error. And so the question is how, as we're looking at harmonization, I'd love to hear how you see this type of kind of the legacy issues of where the regulations are in place being harmonized at a more cross-jurisdictional level.
Shall we move the microphone very swiftly there? And then I'll ask, anybody from the panel who wants to give a reflection.
Thank you. I'm Marcio Viegas at Sustain. We run a program, capacity building program called ESG Metrics in the last 3 years. Normally focus on European companies. So my 2 questions are the classical one about double materiality. What are your views and how do you do that? And then maybe that's to ISSB. I know that we are at COP, it is climate, but what about the other environmental and social and governance standards? What are your plans? I know that we have to apply the ones we have, but what about the next ones? Thank you.
Yeah. Who would like to take those questions, just quick reflections? Please,
I can take the one on double materiality, if that's okay. For us, is the focus on enterprise value was really quite helpful in terms of really defining what needs to go in the annual report. That created discussions for us. Do we need to continue to write a sustainability report? So we are not listed, we don't have any business in the EU. So whatever the CDSB does, we don't actually care. And it's a really great reference for us, but from a compliance or regulatory perspective, it's not our domain. But where we landed at this juncture is that we will continue to write, and what I hope to do actually in the future is not really write a sustainability report, but write an impact report. And that, in my mind, is still what needs to evolve. And double materiality, as I mentioned earlier, that's a helpful sort of guide to bring content to each one of those considerations.
Thank you. Please, Mohammed.
Okay. Regarding some of the discrepancies, my first answer would be don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. So we need to start from, we need to have a point to start from. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck in the same place and not moving forward. Having said that, there is a requirement and a need for having assessment reports on the reporting frameworks, on the details of the data itself on Scope 3 and Scope 2 and Scope 1 probably. So like we have the suspended doing business report, for example, of the World Bank, we might be needing a similar report that gets into the details of the reporting of the different either companies or as well requirements by the different jurisdictions and countries, and get to compare this on an annual basis. And here would be the starting point to ensure that they are more or less standardized across the globe as you move along. However, whether we like it or not, there will be some differences that eventually, hopefully, will fade out. Like the IFRS, I believe with the adoption of IOSCO, it was in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, of the reporting standards. It was very early on, but before that, you haven't seen much, I would say, adoption by local jurisdictions for the IFRS standards. With this, and nowadays, you get to see less differences between the different jurisdictions in the accounting standards or the reporting standards. The same will happen regarding sustainability. But we need to accept at a point of time that we will have these type of difficulties, these type of discrepancies that we need to accept for the time being. Thank you.
Marty.
Cheers. I almost can't say it better, but one of the brilliant things that Jingdong and Bing here did when they set the global baseline is they allowed in year one for Scope 3 to allow for these sort of jurisdictional nuances, right? And they're the building blocks. And they're those really important bits that allow for those existing sort of nuances, if you like, that already exist to be used alongside S1 and S2. So that's a really important piece. Obviously, we want to try it and bring it all in over time, but it allows you to get started now using that baseline and the standards as they are. On the wider double materiality piece, if you may, we do only deal with investor-focused materiality, if you like, if you want to really make it simplistic. But we do work very closely. We do understand impacts can affect the bottom line, and where they are, you should be reporting them in line with S1 and S2. But where they're broader, they do exist. People do GRI reporting and wider reporting. What we really want, what's really needed, is that one consistent, comparable story from corporates to the market, telling that full picture. And our standards provide some of that, and hopefully, particularly in Asia, our work with GRI through the new Sustainable Innovation Lab will help provide that other coherent collective piece along with the CDP data set. So we have got, if you like, more building blocks in place, if you like, the other way, to help that one consistent, complete story from corporates coming through to reduce the burden and, again, be able to tell that full picture that you were referring to.
Many thanks, Marty. Oh, please, Jindong.
Sorry, just wanted to add on Scope 3. I wanted to send a message because this is super important, right? And I think the board recognized that investors really strongly asked for Scope 3. But I can also speak, because I was former head of the World Bank Group pension, that when investors look at Scope 3, it's not a single year super accurate data they are looking for. They are looking for the ballpark. They're looking for a time series of direction of travel, right? Just to say that, use the analogy, we are starting to speak a new global language. Who can say on day one, we're going to speak it perfectly? Small mistakes, people can understand, right? While the world is converging on a single way of measuring Scope 3. So the message to preparers, to regulators, is start reporting. Right? And then with time, you will get to a better place. I just wanted to make sure that message is sent over. Thank you.
Sorry, you clapped to Jindong.
Half of our.
So you clapped to Jindong and he said
a couple of points to be added to Jingdong shared just now. Another consideration about Scope 3 is actually quite related to SMEs, because nobody sitting at ISSB would like the SME to take further additional reporting burden or compliance responsibility.
That's proportionality.
Yes, exactly. So that's a really practical solution to include SMEs' efforts. Review SMEs' efforts. They deserve better funded via the Scope 3 of their co-reporting entity in their value chain. That's our technical design, one of the consideration. And about the double materiality. I'm really curious what you are continuing to reporting in your ESG report.
But I'm afraid that unfortunately,
Sustainability-related disclosure report.
They're going to kick us out. Okay,
we
so
cannot really get
with these chairs
to
as well, it would
conclude
be even
the
more difficult to run. Okay.
yeah, we cannot really
Keep going.
get to conclude the discussion here. But I will invite everybody to continue the discussion just outside of the room. Let me thank all the panelists of today. Thank you so much. It is indeed a journey, and thank you so much for being part of this journey. Thank you.